Yeah, of course, Krishna is imparting knowledge to Arjuna, and in this process, he is mentioning this particular verse. Whatever action a great man performs, common men will follow. And whatever standards he sets by his exemplary acts, all the world pursues. And then maybe we can quickly just read, it's a short purport Prabhupada gave to that particular verse, and there's, of course, so much of nectar there. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called acharya, or ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra, scripture, to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures like Manu Samhita and similar others are considered standard books to be followed by human society. Thus, the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of such standard Shastras. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or executive head of a state, the father and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. So, of course, we see the context here was that, Arjuna was very, very perplexed about what is his duty. And, he was contemplating practically not to fight. So being a Kshatriya, Krishna was, informing him of the, great responsibility that Kshatriyas have in the world, and that he should definitely not neglect his duty. And so, this verses continue. Later, Krishna even gives the example of himself. And in the 24th verse, he says, if I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put into ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. So, of course, let's not talk about society today and all the leaders of the world. Kalaswarup has just arrived. And, just thinking about that can make one very, very sick about the standard morals of leaders in the world today. Practically every single country has just got drama galore. Leaders who are not only not qualified by any means, they seem to be just the lowest of the lowest of the low. It's one thing someone is making an attempt and trying, but somehow the other. So it's very sad and unfortunate that, the world situation is like that. And what's more unfortunate, or the most unfortunate, is that these leaders didn't just pop out of the box as a leader. Unfortunately, they were elected. So that makes it even more painful to try to wrap your head around and understand. So, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, all of these Shastra, is very, very clear about the standards and norms that should be followed by society in general. And so we see in the, Vedic literatures, there's just so many great examples of, such powerful personalities, that had exemplary leadership capabilities. And of course, in this verses, chapters, we're describing or discussing the glories of Prahlad Maharaj. Of course, we understand Prahlad Maharaj was also one of the great Mahajans. And in this particular verse, it is explained that Prahlad Maharaj, of course, we understand even, as a child, he was so devoted, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that even, as a small boy, he was trying to educate and share transcendental knowledge, whoever would listen. So even his classmates, he was constantly, preaching about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And even if he was not preaching, this verse is, saying that just by seeing his bodily features when he was in perfect ecstasy, persons very poor in spiritual understanding become purified. So, this verse gives us, nice information that even just by seeing a pure devotee of the Lord, one can become purified. So sometimes, we try to analyze that and understand, what does it mean? Suddenly the entire Vedic literatures comes into his mind or brain. No, it's not that. It's just that we are so conditioned, having been born so many millions and billions and trillions of times in this material world, our conditioning is so deep that, any thought or even glimpse of a thought of, spiritual subject matter or anything is so far removed. So we understand, of course, we are spirit soul. So because we have got nothing to do with this material world, we're all part and parcel of Krishna. This spiritual nature is innate. It's just because of a lifetime and lifetime of conditioning in the material world that we become covered over. But our true nature is, of course, the spiritual nature of the spirit soul. And because of this coverings, so, that we can understand that there's just layers and layers of coverings. And because of those layers of coverings, we do not even understand that there is such a thing as spiritual subject matter. So we see that, when there's great pure devotees around us, just by seeing them, just by observing their behavior, we can become purified. And, our journey back home, back to Godhead, almost immediately begins at that point in time, can begin at that point in time. So, it's just a matter of time. If one is able to meet a devotee, get a book, or, somehow the other start this process of Krishna consciousness, that we can gradually make advancement. So we see, of course, the Bhagavatam offers so many great devotees. I was thinking of Queen Kunti, and her prayers that she had made. And, of course, Queen Kunti is, such an advanced devotee that, but still at the same time, as far as the pastime is concerned, we saw that there was just so much of calamities, happening in the lives of the Pandavas. And, they were tortured in so many ways, so much of difficulty was there in their lives, that we see eventually, Queen Kunti was making prayers that, bring on the calamities, my dear Lord, because when there's calamities, I immediately start to remember you. So one time, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was giving class, and, he was asking the devotees, how many of you can pray? We won't put anybody on the spot. How many of you can pray like Queen Kunti? Because, of course, so much happens in life today that we don't have so much of time for, spiritual subject matter and, training ourselves in this spiritual subject matter, that, the days can come and go very, very quickly. But, I think all of us experience that when there is some drama in our life, in whatever small way, it may just be even getting pricked by a thorn, or, maybe some greater calamity, being diagnosed with cancer, or, some incurable disease, that, one suddenly starts to think about God. So, of course, there is the atheistic characters in the world, and I can't even wrap my head around what they think. But nevertheless, for the rest of us, we definitely start to think about God in some form. So another great example is, of course, Bali Maharaj. I think someone had mentioned him recently in class. Bali Maharaj, of course, he was another great devotee of the Lord. He was also in the demon family, just like Prahlad Maharaj. And of course, we know the pastime where Bali Maharaj, Vamanadev, had asked for 3 steps of land. And even though his spiritual master, Sukracharya, had told him, this is a trick, don't give him anything, Bali Maharaj was such a great devotee that he had granted the 3 steps of land and surrendered fully to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see even in the demoniac world, there was so many examples that there's just so many devotees there too, just like Prahlad Maharaj. So we see Prahlad Maharaj, giving us this exemplary character of, a pure devotee of the Lord. And even though, he was born in the demoniac family. So, oftentimes we may use the excuse that I was born in a Malacha family, I was born in the West, I wasn't so fortunate to be born in India, in Bharatvash. And, so many excuses come, but, we see there's so many great examples. I was also thinking how even at some point we read in the previous canto, I think, how what's his name became the spiritual master. I mean, became the priest of the demigods. What was his name? Vishvambara. Vishvambara. So, of course, he had some demoniac blood in him as well. But, there was nobody else to take the role of the priest. And you can call it fate had decided, because Indra had killed the previous priest. And so, fate, as fate would have it, even Vishvambara became the priest for the demigods. But ultimately, of course, he met his end as well, because he was also taking some of the sacrificial benefits and offering it on the side quietly to the demons as well. And so, when Indra found out, he was also very, very upset and angry. So, what other points I had? So on the contrary, we see there's, the example of someone with really demoniac qualities. And of course, the classic example is the title of the chapter, that Hiranyakashipu, someone who's also on the other extreme end, that he was so envious, even though he was so highly qualified in terms of the Vedic literatures, he was, fully conversant. Still, somehow or the other, he had missed the point. And the point is to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And, he was completely against, Vishnu. So, this kind of mentality, of course, we see with that example, does not end well. So another example I was thinking of was Duryodhan. Of course, he was just so envious. and no good qualities whatsoever. It was explained in Mahabharata that even when Duryodhan was born, all the inauspicious signs was there, that this entity, this personality that's being born is just going to be bad news. And Dhritarashtra was advised that because of all of these bad omens, maybe we should just terminate this whole uh, uh, drama, and just not allow Duryodhan to be born. But of course, he was already so attached, and we see that Duryodhan eventually led to so much of destruction. So Duryodhan, of course, he was so envious of the Pandavas that it's explained. Even at some point, some proposal was made that why don't you just give 5 villages for the Pandavas to rule? They don't need the entire kingdom, the entire world to rule. Just give 5 villages. But he was so demoniac, so envious that he said he will not even give a piece of land, not enough to even drive a pin into. So this is how envious he was. So, so many examples are there in the Shastra of great personalities that we can learn so much from. Prahlad Maharaj, we see that even after Nrsingadev had appeared, he was so ferocious that even so many great personalities present were not able to pacify Nrsingadev and his ferociousness. And so of course Prahlad Maharaj was pushed forward, and and in this way even Nrsingadev had become pacified. So then I was thinking, about the Shikshastakam prayers, which we're supposed to recite daily, prayers given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. And, these wonderful 8 prayers Lord Chaitanya has given us. And I was looking at the translation again and again, and, many of us have by-hearted the translation. But still, if we go through the words, Nadanamna Janamna Sundarim Kavitam Vajagarishakamaye Mama Janma Janmeshware Bhavated Bhakti Ahutiki Tvai. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? So I was thinking it's very nice to learn these verses, and we should definitely recite it, every single day. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. And of course, the last verse, I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipable Lord unconditionally. So I think, after by hearting the verses, we should slowly go through these verses and try to understand, what is the actual purport of all of these verses. And, Prabhupada has given extensive purports to even just the Shikshastakam prayers. But try to see how we are imbibing this in our everyday personal lives. And, I've said it often that Krishna consciousness, yes, of course, there's so many rules and regulations that we must follow, are compelled to follow, at least in the initial stages of our Krishna consciousness. But still, at the same time, Krishna consciousness is a very, very personal journey that, are we just doing it for show? Are we doing it, so that others can see, I'm such a nice devotee, I'm, very committed, I am this, I am that, and so many, reasons might be there. And even, maybe in the beginning stages, that might be okay too, that for whatever reason, chant the holy names of the Lord, even if it is just, as a, uh, sometimes your friends will test you, you know, why don't you try to become a Hare Krishna? Or whatever the reason might be, whatever the inspiration is, to even just temporarily try it out. Yes, we should definitely chant the holy names of the Lord, and in this way we can become purified. This is the power of the holy names of the Lord. So in this example, we can see even just by seeing a pure devotee, one can make spiritual advancement. So by what to speak of, chanting the holy names of the Lord, it is so powerful that we can become purified. But at the same time, at some point, we also need to become serious about our Krishna consciousness and our goal of going back home, back to Godhead. That we need to, delve a little bit deeper in the subject matter and see how we are learning and taking, some of the teachings to heart, so that the most important thing is our heart can become cleansed of all of these layers of conditioning. And in this way, the real, advancement can begin. Otherwise, we can end up being like, so many devotees have spoken about how sometimes we end up chanting Hare Krishna, so-called chanting Hare Krishna for 30 or 40 years, but still have this dry taste in our mouth, when chanting, where we are just vibrating the words, but not hearing the mantra. So, just this mechanical chanting does not give us um, benefit in terms of, realizing the goal. So, no blind recitation of the Maha Mantra. Actually, at some point it becomes offensive when, we start trying to think of how to use the Maha Mantra for our own material benefit. So as far as, everyday examples around us, of course, in Port Royal, we don't have, heaps and heaps of pure devotees around us every day. Still, at the same time, we have the association of each other as devotees. And, by following the process, by, coming to the temple, seeing the deity of the Lord, discussing, spiritual subject matter like we are now in the Bhagavatam class, hearing from advanced devotees, in this way, all of these things, we can gradually make a spiritual advancement. So, of course, even, around us, everyday, day-to-day lives, we also have had so many nice examples around us, so many nice families that, live in the community as well. Many of us, had the association of Bali Maharaj Prabhu and his commitment and dedication to Krishna consciousness. You know, for so many decades, he was just steadfastly chanting Hare Krishna, worshiping the deity. So, so many nice examples have been there. Even Bali Prabhu, I can say that, for most of us, that when we saw him, he was always chanting Hare Krishna. So he was in such a jolly mood that, one could not help but also chant along with him when he was chanting. Right now in the community, of course, such nice examples are there too. Mother Divya is coming so nicely, dedicated, committed, rain, snow, whatever it is, to dress the deities. So, so many nice examples are there. So in this way, we can take inspiration, from all of these devotees that are steadfast in their commitment. I was thinking Mother Divya, she had such a health challenge, just before she came to Gita Nagari. Oh, they were en route actually, all packed, and en route to relocate from Denver to Gita Nagari when she was, diagnosed with such a health challenge that, for the ordinary devotee, who might have just been starting his journey in Krishna consciousness, that sort of a health challenge would have just been complete devastation to their spiritual life and spiritual practice. But, she took it as the mercy of the Lord and, just remained steadfast in her commitment, in her vows to chanting. And, she was able to, come through that major challenge in her life, very, very graciously. Of course, on a physical level, it, was very, very difficult, but still at the same time, she continues to be dedicated to Sri Sri Radha Damodar's, dressing and service and in so many ways. So, so many wonderful examples are around us. So we see the example of Prahlad Maharaj again, when he was being tortured in so many ways, elephants his father sent elephants to trample him to death. He was thrown off cliffs, so many things. But because of his dedication and, determination towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was not harmed in any possible way. So can you imagine, the power of his devotion? So we can take strength, from great spiritually advanced devotees, and in this way remain steady on our path, whatever paths we may be on, our journey to make spiritual advancement with the goal of getting purified and going back home, back to Godhead. Devotees are always protected, similar to how Prahlad Maharaj was protected when adversity comes. So, okay, that's all I had for today. Any comments, questions about the association of pure devotees? How Prahlad Maharaj, just by seeing him, one became purified. By seeing his bodily features when he was in perfect ecstasy, persons very poor in spiritual understanding became purified.
Hare Krishna, good morning, Dhruva. Thank you so much for the class. And thank you for the text letting us know that you were going to be late. What really I appreciated while you were talking about this shloka was that people saw him, and it wasn't that he was attempting to change them, or his behavior was such because of his love and devotion that just his presence changed them. And I was thinking, what a high goal that is, that we don't have to, that our being preaches. That's like a really high goal and something to strive for, that people sort of see a walking Bhagavad Gita because of the way we're behaving. Wouldn't that be amazing? So that's what really I was thinking about. And just that also, one of the prayers that I still recite, because I grew up reciting it, is the St. Francis of Assisi prayer. And it's basically, at its base level, it just says, Lord, change me. Like, change me so much that when people see me, they experience you. So yeah, that's what I got out of your I'm going to say your preaching, but your class this morning. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mata. Jai Yes, and of course, as devotees, we also need to be very, very careful because the world is also watching. Every day as we go out into our work environments, the streets, wherever it is, people. That's a good reminder also that people are also watching, and for those persons that know you and know that you're a devotee, also have an expectation that okay, this is some sort of a spiritual person, or is a devotee, or is inclined in that way, that we have to walk our talk as well in our everyday life. So we also have this responsibility to Srila Prabhupada, to carry ourselves in such a manner that we do Srila Prabhupada proud. Otherwise, if we also don't carry ourselves properly, speak, in any manner, then in this way, it's not a good example of Krishna consciousness. And someone will say that, oh, just see those rascal Hare Krishnas. And actually, I'm thinking now of that one example that, of course, when one gets on this journey of Krishna consciousness, our understanding is, we don't want to get entangled in other people's karma. So the classic example I'm remembering is, if there's an old lady crossing the street, should we help the old lady cross the street? And so the understanding is that, helping the old lady cross the street, one can get entangled, just by the act, to some degree by doing some good, because it's considered, a good thing to help an elderly person. But if, our understanding of the Shastra is that when you do good, some good is going to happen to you as well. So when you act, in these modes, mode of goodness, then, you're going to accumulate good karma, so to speak. So as devotees, we understand we don't want to accumulate good karma, nor do we want to accumulate bad karma, because that means that we have to take another birth, and, have the effects of this good or bad karma come upon us. So the idea is we don't want to accumulate good karma. So it seems like, according to the Shastra, we don't even help the poor old lady who's, hunchback and very, very lame across the street. But what did Prabhupada tell us? Prabhupada said, no, rascals, you should um, help the old lady across the street. So not in the sense of accumulating good karma, but, in the context of the situation, if someone knows that you're a devotee and, they will criticize the movement, and, thereby get themselves, bad karma as well by criticizing the movement, and just see how heartless devotees are, that they think they're so puffed up that they don't even want to help an old lady across the street. So by all means, please do it, but it's the consciousness which we do it. That, if our consciousness is, I'm trying to do some good, then you're going to get, this good karma, so to speak, accumulation. But if the consciousness is that, on the spiritual platform, then, like Arjuna was, even though he was killing on the battlefield, he wasn't accumulating this karma, or, all of this karma by killing so many people because of his consciousness. His consciousness was that he was doing his duty. He's a Kshatriya, he has to fight. And so in this way, he wasn't accumulating karma. Any more comments, questions on this verse, dear devotees? Oh, in the purport, Prabhupada mentions this one point. He quotes this verse, but since bhakti is unconditional, ahutiki apratihata, Prahlad Maharaj was never disturbed by the chastisements of Hiranyakashipu. So, of course, many of us, or we may be familiar that, Bhakti, in one sense, cannot be checked by, anything. Pure devotion cannot be checked by any material conditions. So even though Prahlad Maharaj's situation was, so unimaginably degraded, his environment was the worst imaginable. Imagine living in a palace full of demons, a father who's trying to kill you repeatedly, an education system that's teaching you atheism, constant physical, verbal abuse. Despite that, Prahlad Maharaj never forgot the Lord, nor did his remembrance of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, diminished in any way whatsoever. So this should be the faith and determination that we should have in Krishna consciousness, that no matter the circumstances. Yes, so much is going on in America right now, so much is going on around the world, in my job, in my everyday life. Everything seems very, very difficult. Still, at the same time, we should never uh, wane in our determination in Krishna consciousness. So many challenges will come, so many difficulties will come. Still, at the same time, we should remain steadfast. Whether happiness or distress comes, we should try to be equipoised. And gradually, as we make spiritual advancement, we can come to this level of not being disturbed by the external environment. I was thinking, I heard a class by Niranjan Maharaj, where he was giving an example of when he came to Krishna consciousness. The early days was the wonderful days in Krishna consciousness. And so he was giving the example that one time one devotee had given him a tape of Prabhupada. And, in those days, tapes were very, very rare. And so, he cherished his tape, and practically every day he used to listen to Prabhupada. It was very rare to hear from Prabhupada because, they never had internet and, all 1,700, 800 lectures of Prabhupada available, at any second. So every day he used to listen. And, one of the things Prabhupada was talking about in that lecture was that in the beginning, Krishna consciousness is very, very nice. But then gradually, difficulties will start to arise. And, one needs to be prepared how one is going to deal, with these challenges on the path of bhakti. And so, this class he was listening to every day. And so, this point was always playing on his mind. And so at some point he joined the temple. He moved in, made the decision to move into the temple in Boston. And, after he had moved in, he seems to still continue enjoying Krishna consciousness, enjoying prasad. Everything was very nice. Every day attending Mangal Artik without fail, was just so blissful, so ecstatic, And so he used to remember this tape. And, Prabhupada, he remembered Prabhupada saying, Krishna consciousness is very, very nice. And, he was testifying, yes, Prabhupada is so true. It's just so nice. And then after a few weeks, he had some difficulty waking up one morning for Mangal Artik. And of course, in those days, the Bhakta leader, uh, they were very, very strict. There was no question, not even a thought of not attending Mangal Arati. And so, one would get some purification if you didn't attend. And so they had some extreme ways, he said, of dealing with that, the Bhakta leader. And not only Boston, it was just practically, I think, going on around the world. And he said one of the methods they used to use at their temple, was that they used to grab the sleeping bag at the bottom and lift it up, so you would fall out. So very extreme methods. Otherwise, the other thing they would do was they would take a glass of water and throw it on your face if you didn't wake up from Mangal Artik. So very, very extreme measures. And it seemed like it became a daily thing that, this waking up became very, very difficult, more and more difficult. And, after a few days or weeks, I said that, he was trying to rectify himself, trying to, different things, but still things weren't working. And he got to a point where one day he just, slammed the floor with his fist and said, "Enough, I'm out of here, can't do it anymore." That morning when he was, very, very harshly, awakened that he had enough. And, after he had woken up, because, he was barely awake when, this kind of like natural reaction was there. But after, he had woken up, got himself together, then suddenly, this tape of Prabhupada playing, came to his mind and head, that it will be very, very difficult after some time. But, one needs to remain steadfast in their determination and commitment to Krishna consciousness. So, this line of Prabhupada just kept playing in his head. And so then he had made a resolve, not to move out and, continue to stay. And, gradually things started to improve again. But, this constant hearing of Prabhupada was what saved him from, this mentality of just being frustrated, angry, and, making rash decisions. Okay, thank you. If there's no other comments or questions, we'll end there. Anything else? Anyone else wants to share? Thank you. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I'll have to go connect the computer. So just give me 2 seconds. Well, I guess I can do both simultaneously.
Nanda Shri Advaita Garadhara Shri Radha make us want us to finish. Since yeah, so it's just okay. I just sometimes the fix. So this is our time. Is to take this is somehow take that exercise. So you had to think it took you just like little have to get right. But not a problem, the right way to say this station, that's easy. When you turn off the feed and charge it, you're gonna do. Someone's gonna wait.
Tarka.